President Biden signing the short-term spending bill into law yesterday. The continuing resolution will keep the government funded into March and provides more than $100 billion in disaster aid. But the bill did not raise the debt ceiling, despite President-elect Trump calling for it. Lawmakers now looking to raise or eliminate the debt ceiling in the first reconciliation package. House Republicans reportedly considering a plan to raise the limit by $1.5 trillion while cutting $2.5 trillion in mandatory spending. Maria spoke with incoming White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt and Kentucky Senator Rand Paul about it on Sunday Morning Futures. Listen.
It's a fantastic idea, and President Trump is in full support of it, as he has expressed in recent days. Look, the continuing resolution that passed happened because of President Trump. It includes critical aid for our farmers, critical aid and disaster relief for our fellow Americans who were impacted by Hurricane Helene. But as soon as Republicans return to the Hill in January, they have to deal with the debt ceiling. This is the last tool in Senator Schumer and the Democrats' toolbox to try to obstruct President Trump's America First agenda.
I'm one of the conservatives, has never voted to raise the debt ceiling. But there are circumstances in which I would, and I've put those forward before. I have a plan to balance the budget in 5 years. If we had a speaker with a spine who put forward a budget and a plan to cut spending over a 5-year period to balance the budget, I'll vote to raise the debt ceiling, because you still have to add debt during that 5 years.
Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne telling Semaphore House Republicans have a plan for tax cuts in the first reconciliation package, finishing the bill by March. Joining me now is Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. She is a member of the House Ways and Means and Small Business Committees. Congresswoman, many Republicans support the idea of 2 reconciliation bills, with border and defense coming first and then a second bill on taxes happening later in the year. Why do you say taxes need to be included in that first bill?
I don't think that we've actually seen 2 reconciliation packages in decades being able to be passed by the House. I think you've got very narrow majority. I think, this last election was very important. It showed that the people, of our country are very concerned about what's happening at their border, but they're also very concerned about what's happening in their pocketbooks. And I think moving forward on continuing with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 and the success that it had, and recognizing the fact that that expires in 2025. And if those provisions are not extended, nearly 90% of all taxpayers in America are going to face some of the largest tax hikes that we've ever seen in our American history. And I think as a result, we need to prioritize a tax package and get it done earlier in the year rather than later. That being said, if we have to wait and we're prioritizing our border with the first reconciliation package, it's something we definitely need to discuss. So I'm looking forward to actually having a president that will sign that into law and having a Senate with a majority of Republicans that are willing to work with us on it.
Long way to go. Congresswoman, you were one of 34 House Republicans who voted against the continuing resolution. Now some lawmakers want to remove House Speaker Mike Johnson from his speakership role, including Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who told Maria just this weekend that Johnson should lose his job. Congresswoman, explain why you voted against the continuing resolution, and do you think the House needs new leadership?
I think, I would not want Mike Johnson's job right now. Being the speaker, when you have such narrow majorities and you've got such a diversity of opinion of Republicans, of Republican House members, it's very difficult to try to come to a consensus. I voted against the continuing resolution, as I always have, because I have fought against over government spending, which is what we have seen. This will be my 3rd term. We always seem to wait until the last minute to negotiate some of these things. And it's the overspending that has gotten us 20% inflation. It's the overspending and the overreach that has gotten us $36 trillion in debt. We need to attack that. And we need to counter, though, if we're going to lift the debt ceiling, like we have discussed, having those cuts and having the debt ceiling risen by $1.5 trillion, but also having additional cuts of $2.5 trillion is something I think we can definitely work with. But continuing the same level of Pelosi spending and then some, continuing the same level of spending that we had during the pandemic, I just think that, when we look at the causes of the last election, and again, when you're looking at the economy, we have got to address that.
Spending has been totally out of control. Congresswoman, you're taking a lot of action on the border before President Trump takes office. You recently introduced the Voter Eligibility Verification Act, which requires citizenship and immigration services to respond to state inquiries regarding citizenship data within 30 days of receiving that request. You also introduced the No Congressional Funds for Sanctuary Cities Act, while starting a new effort encouraging officials in your district to work with ICE in deporting criminal illegal immigrants. Your plan to work closely with Texas mayors to coordinate efforts with law enforcement. Congresswoman, I know you used to be the mayor of Irving, Texas. Explain to us, if you could, how closely these state officials can work with ICE.
Oh, it's fantastic. If you actually, we don't have the resources at the federal government level to be able to be in, neighborhoods to know what's going on in every single city, which is why you want to partner with local law enforcement. And when I was the mayor of Irving, when I was on the city council in Irving, we had a great partnership with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. If people were stopped in our city for committing a crime, they were detained if they were suspected of not being in our country legally. ICE came and interviewed them, and if they were found to be here illegally, they were deported. We got a lot of negative criticism from places like California and New York, but as a result, what we found was our city became the 5th safest city in the country. Our crime plummeted, and we actually had people and businesses that wanted to move to our city. We became one of the fastest growing areas of the country. That is a result of having, safe neighborhoods, which is, I think, again, what we heard overwhelmingly people want in the last election. Partnering with Immigration and Customs Enforcement at the local level is the most efficient and most effective way possible. You've got a border czar, a senior advisor to the incoming president with Tom Homan, who has the respect, who has the knowledge, who's got the experience to be able to get these things done. And I will, work with every single mayor. We intend on having some roundtables next month with our mayors to teach them these are the partnerships, this is our experience, and this is how you can succeed in working with, federal law enforcement and protecting your citizens. And we want to make sure that they've got every tool, every resource available to be able to do that.
EJ, did you have a thought on this?
Congresswoman, one of the things that, although the Trump tax cut was incredibly effective, one of the things I think that reduced its effectiveness was the incredible delay in actually getting it done, getting across the finish line the first time around. Do you anticipate that the Speaker's actually going to be able to get it done and get it done early so that we don't have a delay and so that we don't have those tremendous lags in terms of economic activity where people essentially are pausing, whether it's investment, consumption, whatever the case may be, waiting to see if you're going to be able to get that tax cut across the finish line?
Businesses definitely can work with the rules if they know what they are. They're not constantly changing. They need consistency. And again, I think that's important. That's the benefit of having, the tax package in the first reconciliation bill, the only reconciliation bill that we may be able to pass. I think it's important that businesses know that as a result of the TCJA, we saw so much investment, we saw so much economic growth, we saw so many companies bringing back their manufacturing to, our land as opposed to in foreign countries. And we saw them investing in their employees. We saw them investing in the future of the business. I think those tax cuts, that tax plan will be necessary for the economic growth of our future. And I intend on working in ways and means, and I'm working with the rest of our conference to make sure that we're able to bring that over the finish line.
Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.